Hello and welcome. The UK Parliamentary debate, the one in response to the petition calling for a general election, has taken place. Did you watch it? If you did watch it, what did you think? I watched it and I thought, on balance, it was a good thing. It was a good thing the debate had taken place. I was a little bit fearful that not a lot of people would turn up. And if they did turn up, they wouldn't be fully engaged. But quite a few people were there, and a lot of people were fully engaged. Let me play you a short clip from the beginning of the debate, which I think helps set the scene.
Creating a petition is a means of advocacy and participation. A petition is not an autonomous decision-making tool which can act as a substitute for a representative democracy. We need to remember these important principles. But I will give way to my honourable friend.
Does my honourable friend agree, however, that the petition allows the public to express their anger and disappointment at the failure of the Labour government to deliver on so many pledges?
And now what I'd like to do is to play you some snippets from a few of the speakers who were talking on behalf of the government.
We are going to make the most of the full term we have in our government and in government to deliver on the policies that we have set out in our manifesto. Now, one of the first promises we made was to manage the public finances properly, to balance the books on day-to-day spending as any responsible government should. And we knew this one wouldn't be easy, but we are simply not prepared to continue with the fiction that there are no difficult decisions required to fund our NHS properly, to rebuild our schools, and to pay down the £22 billion black hole left by the former Conservative government. And if the parties opposite, and I include all of them in this, if they are serious about rebuilding trust in politics, about rebuilding trust in politicians, then they must stop pretending that there are no difficult decisions required to balance the books.
Because their kids can't buy a home.
Exactly.
They're angry because their parents can't get the hip operation they need. And they're angry because when their car gets nicked or their house gets burgled, the police don't seem to be able to do much about it. But it's clear where the blame for this lies. The Conservative Party have been in charge of this country for the last 14 years. It was the Conservative Party who didn't build the affordable homes we need. It was the Conservative Party who ran our NHS into the ground. And it was the Conservative Party who drastically reduced the number of neighbourhood police officers on our streets.
But I think we probably both agree that for far too long, far too many politicians have taken our electorates for granted and have let people down. And that is something none of us, whatever political party we're here to represent today, should allow to continue any further. Because while it's not the first time I've been elected to serve my community, it's felt like a time for me where the stakes couldn't be higher.
I think the first thing to note is that the Tories were mentioned. And this is really important because the Tories made a mess and left a mess. There were things that they would say that they had done well, but of course there were a lot of things that they didn't do well. And it's interesting, at least to me, that some of the rebuttals, if I could call them that, for those people who were speaking on behalf of the government in response to this call for a general election, which we knew couldn't actually take place. That wasn't the point, really, of that petition. But those people seemed to miss a point. So absolutely, I agree, and I think a lot of people would, an awful lot of people would, that the Tories were less than adequate, to put it mildly. And yet, that was, I believe, part of the issue that caused that petition to get so many signatures. And what I mean by that is that people had lost trust. They'd lost faith in the Tories, and a lot of them had lost faith actually in politics. And then when they thought, well, I'm not really sure about Labour, or in fact they said, no, great, I'm really sure about Labour, then essentially what was happening was people were putting their faith in this party, the Labour Party, and its leader. And then what happened is that that faith for a lot of people turned out to be misplaced. That's not the only thing, but that's a big component which has fueled that petition. And it's easy to say, yes, it's foreign actors and bots and all the rest of it that are signing it. No doubt that will be in the mix. Of course it will. But an awful lot of people, real people in the UK, did sign it. And a lot of them are angry and just feeling betrayed. Let's see what Nigel Farage had to say, or at least part of what he had to say.
They feel things are being done to them they didn't have realistic expectations of. But the broader problem, I think, is the economy as a whole. The economy works on confidence. People borrow money, lend money according to confidence in each other. And in the Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I mean, we've got two people who look like they're going to a family funeral every day. There is an air of miserablism. Even a speech from the Prime Minister, the complete opposite to Tony Blair. This isn't things can only get better, it's things can only get worse. We are literally, yes, of course.
I thank the member for giving way. When you come into a new job and you discover that there's a £22 billion black hole, I think you'd look a bit miserable as well, don't you agree?
The idea of a 22 billion black hole is nonsense. It's 2.7 trillion. The national debt is massive. It exploded over the course of the last... It increased by 2.5 times over the course of the last 14 years, and it's set to go higher still. We are in much deeper difficulty economically. Even to talk about a £22 billion black hole is not to understand the problems that we've got. We have zero growth in this country.
And I think it's interesting to listen to Nigel Farage. Of course, that's only part of what he had to say. In my opinion, he came at things from a slightly different perspective than any of the other speakers. And whether you like Nigel Farage or don't like him, I do believe that his presence will be useful because we need things to be stirred up. And the tried and tested approaches, or should there be tired and tested approaches, haven't really been giving us the results that we have wanted so far. Now, let's go back then to this trust thing. First of all, some of the speakers on behalf of the government were talking about their desire to make a difference and to serve. I'm paraphrasing. That, I believe, is the essence of what they were saying. And there was genuine emotional engagement. There was genuine humanity. And that's one of the reasons that I'm more optimistic than I was. But I said that before. I said that way back in July. There are good people in that building. There are good people in that party. And more power to you. Other people, and this is perhaps because they've got to do this politically, or maybe they've been asked to do it, pursued a more bullish line in that we were left with this mess and therefore, we can't solve it in just a few months. I absolutely, totally agree. No one is disagreeing with that. So I think they were missing the point, actually, some of those speakers. The issue is this is to do with that contract, that trust contract. And when you think about trust, you can trust an individual, perhaps based on reputation. You can trust an institution, perhaps based on reputation. But sometimes you mistrust them. And when you trust someone or a group, or you mistrust them, distrust them, then there are feelings involved. There are emotions involved. And when that trust is betrayed, when it's broken, not only is it difficult to get it back, it makes people feel bad. And so a lot of the people that were signing that petition were not signing it because they thought, oh, well, the Tories were dreadful. They made an utter mess of things and we expected you to solve it all within a few months. Not at all. People are not stupid. They knew that wouldn't happen. They were signing it because they felt that sense of betrayal, that strong emotion that just feels awful. because they put the faith and confidence in this party, in this group of people, in that leader. That's what's going on, or one of the main things, in my opinion, that has been going on and still is going on. So the party need to listen to that and the leader to restore confidence. Let's look at one more little clip, and I would encourage you to look at the longer version, and I say to look at the full debate if you get the chance. It's very interesting. But I think this captures the flavour of how people are feeling and why the arguments about it was the Tories, it wasn't us, is a false argument. That's not what people are saying. Have a listen to this.
Within my own constituency of Basildon and Billericay, seeing over 6,000 people sign up, nearby friends and my right honourable friends from Raleigh and Wickford and Malden, even more. It is clear that the public feeling behind this position is actually based on the government's significant early failures. And that is an understandable perspective, given the government's primary method of governing so far has been consistently to break their biggest promises and then blame everyone else. As my honourable friend, member for Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk said, promises broken, I think it can reasonably be argued, in a manner that implies contempt for the public and has been highly damaging for the trust in this government. This government's failure and its broken promises started early, Madam Chairman. It was on the morning of the 5th of July that the new Prime Minister walked up to the door of Downing Street and talked about a government of service. Looking on with a new pass and new access was Labour major donor Lord Ali. From the off, it has been clear that the promises of integrity, accountability and transparency by this government have been broken.
Let's move on to then looking specifically at trust. There are many models of trust out there, but I've chosen this one because I think it's quite straightforward, and I believe it's useful for all of us when we consider the situation in the UK with the current government, and also as we look at other leaders who are around on the world stage or in fact in your life, perhaps in business. So the dimensions of trust, Reina Trust Model 99. This model focuses on 3 dimensions of trust, emphasising behaviours and relationships that enhance trust in leaders. Number 1, trust of character, also referred to as contractual trust, reflects a leader's reliability, consistency and ability to keep promises. So right away, part number 1 of 3, as it happens, we can see one of the issues. Reflects a leader's reliability, consistency and ability to keep promises. So when those promises were not kept, at least that's the way a lot of people feel. Remember, people are emotional creatures, so you can have facts, you can have logic, but feelings, emotions play a huge part in decision making, and also, of course, how people view leaders and governments. So people feel that promise wasn't kept, the promise was broken, and so trust has diminished. Even although it had pretty much evaporated with the Tories, it had gone up a little bit. There was a bit of trepidation about Labour and the leader, and indeed that trust, those hopes were dashed to a degree at least. Think then also about number 2, trust of communication. Builds on transparent and open communication. Trust grows when leaders share information honestly, listen actively and avoid withholding critical information. Did the Tories fall foul of that? Absolutely. 100%. Of course they did. But once more, we're looking here at Labour and Labour's leader. So, transparent, open. People, I believe, felt that, well, things weren't quite as they seemed because things changed. And yeah, the £22 billion black hole or more, as Nigel Farage suggests, that's in the mix. But people were led to believe, in terms of communication, who Labour leaders were standing beside, what they seemed to say, in fact did say in interviews, that things would be one way and then they were another. So the communication seemed to be, well, let's say less than clear, to put it politely. Trust of capability, the confidence followers have in a leader's ability to manage tasks and deliver results. Leaders who delegate appropriately and show confidence in their teams enhance this dimension. I can't really talk about delegation because that's sort of behind the scenes. We see in terms of the government, ministers who put forward for certain things and talk to the cameras and debate certain issues. So how that comes about is, of course, behind closed doors. But in terms of the ability to manage tasks and deliver results, well, one of the things that was happening in the debate is that the people speaking on behalf of the government would say, we have been delivering, we are delivering things that we said that we would, and we will continue to deliver. And that's brilliant. That's great. Nobody wants that not to happen. What the issue is, once more, the damage has been done, and it was more about the things that already have been, will have resulted in results that people didn't want, if that makes sense. So how can Labour and Labour's leader recapture that trust? That's what I think, amongst some other things, they need to focus on. How could you do that? Because capability is one thing, but if the tasks and the results are not what people were expecting and not what they necessarily wanted, then the trust and capability is almost like null and void, at least in terms of this little model, or at least in terms of my interpretation of this little model. And then let's consider other leaders out there. Think of those people who, if I say to you, a particular leader who you feel could in some way have an impact on your life. So that could be anywhere. Maybe people who are on the world stage, it may not, of course. But let me pick a few that we will probably both know. So, Keir Starmer, we've got character, we've got communication, and we've got capability. Also, the party itself. What about, however, the Tory party? Think of any of those Tory leaders who spring to mind. Character, keep promises, communication, open, honest, listen actively, capable, the capacity to actually deliver things. Was that there? What about Elon Musk? Reliable? Donald Trump? Joe Biden? Kamala Harris? Nigel Farage? Kemi Badenoch? Think of those people as well in terms of communication. Transparent and open. Listen actively. And capability. Ability to manage tasks and deliver results and to delegate appropriately. Are you seeing those things so far from those people? I think that we have to take a step back and, as far as possible, not to become overpowered by emotions and to look logically at what we're seeing. Are we seeing people who are fit for purpose?